Greetings everyone. So as you can see, this is our assessment. So it's the combination of our activities. So activity 1, activity 2, and activity 3. So you are going to combine all three um, activities. So the lemon, the jar, and the flowers. Okay, so the first thing that you need to do is that you need to sketch it out first. As you can see, I have already sketched the initial look of it, and I'm erasing most of the dark lines, okay, so that when I paint over it, it doesn't show in our painting. Okay, so let's try to avoid that since I used a graphite pencil. Okay, so now I'm going to start first with painting the lemon. Okay, as you can see, I'm starting with yellow. Okay, so I try to make it I'm trying to make it toned down. Okay, so similar to our activity before, so you need to just do a 1 to 2 stroke thing, but what I'm doing here, you can always follow what I'm doing. You can always add more layers to it at the beginning, but be very critical in what you're doing. So I've also left a space that's not painted so that it mimics like a highlight to the lemon. Okay, so I'm just adding a few touches and then I stop. I don't want to touch it anymore because I want to let it dry first. Okay, while we're waiting for it to dry, you can always paint other elements to your painting. So I'm going to start painting with the flowers. Okay, so I'm mixing actually violet and blue together, although you can use blue violet, but this way I can control how much blue and how much violet I'm going to place. So I'm adding a little bit of white to apply a tint color, similar to the video exercises that I have given you. So always start with a question mark to create the petals and then mop all of the water to the center of the petal. Okay, you can also try the other flowers, but I just prefer this one since it has a contrast with the lemon. Okay, you can also choose any color that you prefer as long as all of the flowers, okay, have one color, or you can mix all three flowers together. It's totally up to you. I did not do that, but my requirement is technically just to paint the flowers. Please don't paint any type of flower that you like. Okay, as you can see, I'm painting all of my sketched out flowers. Okay, petal per petal. Try to be patient with it and make sure to mop all of the water towards the center. If you make a mistake, don't touch it anymore. Okay, you can't always do it perfectly. Okay, we can always like go back and redo all of these again, but of course practice always makes perfect in painting. Okay, so as you can see, I am now in my third flower and I am just sweeping and mopping all of the water towards the center. So I've drawn a lot of flowers around it. Make sure to think about the balance of everything. Okay, remember to balance everything out. So if you want, you can always make it into one side, but I always try to think about my composition. Okay, if what I'm trying to emphasize and how much the balance of elements. If your painting is too heavy to look at, so it will really look okay. It will really look different. Okay, so I'm just continuing on painting. As you can see, I did not time lapse this video, So if you want to understand the whole assessment, you will have to watch the whole video. Okay, you can always try it out there at home or in your own time to paint all of these together. Just make sure, okay, you start first with painting it lightly first. Okay, so I'm just double checking everything if I need to add more paint. Okay, I just tried out that flower, so it made it a little darker, but that's okay, I don't really mind. Okay, as you can see of how I stroke it, I don't really, although I do apply more than 1 or 2 strokes to an area, I make sure that it doesn't leave like a really prominent brush mark. Okay, because all of those brush marks or those strokes, okay, will reflect on your painting. So try to apply minimal pressure. So I'm just applying minimal pressure. I'm not using the whole length of the head of the brush. It's just the tip. Okay, and just let it all flow on the paper. Okay, it's okay to start with something slow or something minimal. Okay, so I'm adding more. Okay, just trying to finish up all of my flowers. As you can see, they're all around. Okay, I'm not placing it in one area, but if you're gonna place it in one area, make sure everything is balanced. Okay, like what I said, you can always change the color of your flowers. Okay, as long as it will look nice. Okay, remember that painting involves a lot of composition. Okay, so I painted all my flowers, but I'm deciding to add another one here because technically it's, you know, it needs more. Okay, so I added one more on that area and make sure it's pleasing to the eye. Okay, don't overdo it. Okay, just take one step at a time. Okay, or if you're not sure, you just ask your mom, your dad, or anybody if it will look better if I added more flowers. So I'm adding another one on top of it. Okay, make sure I'm only using the tip and gently applying those petals. If you look at it, it's a very tedious process, I know, but remember, you need to be patient with it. So because this is taking a long time for us to paint, by this time the lemon painting is already dry. Okay, but I'm not going to paint it yet because the more time that I spend, the more it will be drier. Okay, always switch to another area. Okay, so I'm mixing it now with green, my paint. I wanted to do the unopened buds. Okay, so you can always change the way you want to paint it. So I'm painting all of the unopened buds, similar with our petals. I'm always going to place them in between. Okay, make sure they're only small, because if it's not that small, okay, or it will, or it's bigger, so it's gonna look weird, to be honest. So I just continue to add more on the spaces, those big spaces. Basically, you can add a little bit, but if you like, you can add more. So I'm just making sure that I have added enough so that it doesn't look like it's empty. So I'm mixing again my colors because I want to like drop a paint, drop a color on those unopened pods. So I'm changing my brush to a number 3. I think it's a number 3 brush or number 2. Okay, because I want those tiny little colors, just minor colors. If you remember in science, if the flower is unopened, you will see little colors of the flower. So just add a little bit on those areas. Okay, as you can see, I never added I haven't added the stem yet. Okay, so I'm adding another unopened bud here, but this time it's a bit on the purplish side. Okay, or on the, yeah, it's a purple, the purple a little bit more purplish since it's colored with white. Okay, just a little bit. You don't really need to add a lot because technically it's just smaller. This will mimic it like it's at the far back of the jar or the bouquet of flowers that I'm making. Okay, I'm adding one more here. Remember, don't overcrowd it, don't overdo it. Okay, so I'm removing excess paint, so I'm mopping it up. The reason I'm mopping it because I want it to look a little lighter. So to mop it, you need to dry out your brush. It doesn't have any water, and then it will just scoop out the water. Okay, next thing is I'm going to paint the jar. So to paint the jar, similar to our activity 3, so make sure you remember how to paint the jar, or what is called, it's a mason jar. So I'm mixing blue and another type of blue. You can always create your own. Okay. So as I can see that it needs more water, so I added just spreading the colors. Okay. And adding a really thin layer of the paint. Don't paint over the lemon. Okay, make sure that you don't paint over the lemon. So you can just spread out the paint. Since it's a thin layer, when it dries, it's gonna look even. Okay, or you can do the left and right or right to left stroke. Okay. So that's the idea of this painting. Okay, so once I painted everything, every area that needs color, okay, make sure that all of the corners are also painted. Okay. I will just let it dry. Okay, so while we're waiting for it to dry, now go back to the lemon painting. So you had plenty of time to let it dry. So I'm adding another layer of yellow to it. So I'm just painting on that side because technically the bottom side of the lemon is darker, so it has a stronger color. So I want it to be like that. Okay. Then just paint it up to the middle. Okay. If you need to add more paint, especially on the tips, okay, you can always add more. Okay. Please don't create an outline. Okay, don't outline the whole lemon. Okay, if you're gonna place outlines, they're just very minute outlines. Okay? And then I'm just going to clean it up, add more water to it, okay, so that the colors will look even. Okay, so I'm just going to let that dry again now. So you can decide now, where do you want to start. Okay, so you can always start with the flowers, the stem, or the jar. Okay, so I think I decided to paint on the jar instead, but it's still too wet. Okay, so as I said, you need to be very patient when you're trying to paint. Okay, since I don't have a fan, so I'm patiently waiting for it to dry. Okay, so if that happens, guys, you can always go back to the lemon since it's not too wet. Okay, so I'm adding a little bit of orange to certain areas. Okay, but not too much. Okay, I just wanted to have like that touch of a strong color. Remember, a lemon is not totally yellow, although if you look at it, it's totally yellow. There are certain areas that have blemishes or dark areas. And if you notice, I haven't used any black yet. Okay? So just add those small added details to it. And as you can see, it's starting to form already our lemon. Don't add too much orange because it will turn into an orange. And also think about um, how you sketched your lemon. Really needs to look like a lemon, not a mango. Okay? So I'm adding just details on the tips because those are darker areas and have blemishes. Okay? No need to add too much. Alright, so just adding a little touches. I can always go for a little bit more realistic in approach, but since this is the first time that you are combining for still life, so I'm giving you time to understand or get the feel of it. Okay. So now I think my jar is already dry enough. So I'm painting like in our activity before. I'm painting certain areas with another layer of paint. Okay, but not all of it. Okay, so on that area so that you can see the seams of the jar, and then I added just water because I want to spread out those tints. Okay, so to create like a luminous layer. Remember that the jar is glass, so this is how we mimic glass. Okay, I did not apply like unpainted areas anymore. It will just be challenging for you. Okay, and then the reflection or the inside of the jar, so I'm just adding that area, then just dissolving it with water. Okay? It's the same amount of paint, guys. It's the same amount of paint. I did not add more or anything. It's just, just if you add colors again or add paints again, it will create that effect. Okay? As you can see, I'll be just retouching certain areas because it must look like it's seamless. Okay? So I'm just going to add the details to the cap area. Okay? That is where the opening of the jar is, and then just add those fine details. Okay, just a little bit, not too much, and then just dissolve it with water. Okay, but not too much water, just enough for it to be dissolved and to spread out. Okay, this will test out your brush stroke techniques. Okay, so now I'm going to start with the stem of the flowers. Okay, so to start off with the stem, you need to think about the direction it's going. So I'm mixing green, a darker green. So a darker green first, and then it's okay if you can paint it lightly first. So you just need to make a straight line going inside the jar, okay, and towards the middle. Why towards the middle? Remember, we're mimicking something that is a bouquet of flowers in a jar. So tendency when you hold the flowers, they all go towards the middle. Okay? So as you can see, it's a combination of light and dark lines. So make sure that all of the flowers have stems, because it will really look weird if there is a floating flower there. Okay, just make the stems. Okay. Okay, so just continue painting all of the stems. Okay. You need to add more paint, you can just add more paint. So it's okay if it's broken up like that. Okay, I'm creating like an effect wherein it's reflected and sometimes it's not reflected. So just continue to add more stems. So all of the stems, of course, they all need to go towards the middle of the jar. Okay. Alright, so let's continue painting all of it. But don't overdo it, okay? You can always connect some of the stems together. Remember, sometimes flowers are like that. Okay, so I'm connecting it. Alright, so as you can see now, it's all coming together. But certain areas look a bit weird. Okay? The stems of the flower don't look like it's inside the jar. It kind of looks like it's outside the jar. Okay, so we'll fix that. I'm just trying to finish right now placing stems on all of the flowers. So I'm just connecting all of the flowers together, and voila. So all of the flowers are now connected. Now I'm just going to mix some colors to create like the leaves. Okay, I'm adding different types of green. Okay. If you're an experienced painter, you already know what colors would come out. So if you're not sure, please test it out on another piece of paper. Okay, that's okay. Okay, so as you can see, I'm meticulously adding more petals, adding more flowers. Okay, so in this area and this area. Don't overdo it. Remember, don't just add and add. Think about where you're adding. You're adding your leaves. Because if you overdo it, it will look weird. Okay, and we're really far away from correcting everything. So at this point, if you make a mistake, you'll have to redo all of the painting again. Okay? So that's why painting in watercolor increases the way you paint more accurately. You need to be sure of what you are doing. Okay. So I'm just adding those leaves. Alright, so add a little bit more on this area. Okay, not too much. You don't need to add all additional leaves to all of the flowers. Okay. As you can see, I'm not re-dipping my brush because it has a lot of paint and water in it. Okay? But you can always add a little bit more just to balance everything out. Alright, so as you can see, the flowers are now painted. So let's go back to the jar. So I want those stems to disappear kind of like it's inside the jar. So I'm adding another layer of paint, and this time also dissolving the stems of the flowers. So I'm just spreading it out from the inside. Remember, if you're looking at something from outside a glass container, sometimes it gets fuzzy. So this is an effect that I want you guys to do. Okay, so making it fuzzy. So I'm just retracing my lines using the paint that I technically dissolved and placing it on the sides. So now it looks like it's from the inside of the jar. So I'm just adding a little bit more paint for details because I want certain areas to be darker. Remember where you're adding your paint. Okay, so I'm adding like another layer towards the center, but I am leaving out one area that's not painted. Why? Because that is my highlight area. Okay? So I'm adding another layer towards the center. Make sure you don't put a lot of paint on that. Okay, so it's kind of looking good right now. Okay. So I'm not painting that left side of the jar. As you can see, it's still wet. Okay. So while it's still drying, what do we do? Okay, so remember, okay, while we're waiting for it to dry, you can always paint other areas to your painting. You can also decide to paint again on the lemon or on the flowers. So we're going to paint again the lemon. So I'm adding a really dark color of yellow. Okay, it's going to overlap now with the orange color that we placed a while ago. So as you can see, it's just overlapping and overlapping. And I think that's good enough. So let's try not to add any browns or dark color. So you still need more practice. You can always make it look like that. Okay, but if you want, you can try. But remember, if you make a mistake, well, it's too hard for you to fix it then. Okay, so I'm darkening again that area. So I want a darker blue. As you can see, it's still wet. It gets absorbed immediately. So I'm just controlling. It's good that you have, or you're in control of what you are painting, because if you're not in control of your painting, it will look disastrous, or it will turn into a disaster. Okay, so just paint certain areas. So I'm painting again the inside. Okay, because it got blurred out a while ago, and then dissolve it again with water. Okay, create a line there. Remember, I'm not outlining the painting. Okay, so I'm just dissolving it. It will create that natural outline because of the paint. Okay, it looks pretty good in my opinion, but I just want to add a little bit more. So just a few touches, like where we screw the cap on. So it needs to have those ridges. You can just add those ridges, and then just minor details to make it look like it's there. So and then I'm just spreading out the colors. Okay. Because it needs to look like it's see-through. So as you can see, the stems are still there, so I'm overlapping it and it looks like it's inside the jar. Okay, you can always create a water if like if the jar has water inside, that's okay. But of course, you can always do otherwise. So I'm just adding like a bottom area to this painting. So I'm just adding violet, just spreading it at the bottom. Okay, just a preliminary or a first layer of it, so that it just needs that touch of shadows at the bottom. Okay, but you don't really need to do so. But okay, if you like to do it, then why not? Okay, you can always mimic or copy how I painted it, and then I'm double layering immediately. Okay, and try to be careful not to touch the areas that I have painted before. Okay, as you can see, I'm just creating like minimal shadows, just a little bit of shadow, that's enough. I don't really need to add a lot. Okay, and then I place like violet on the yellow. It will create that natural shadow. Okay, so as you can see, it's looking really nice. Okay, so I'm just adding a little bit more violet on this area, but not too much. Okay, just to even out all of the paints. Okay, so using a thin brush again, so I'm fixing certain areas to the jar. Okay, make sure to not overdo it. Be very careful on your painting. Alright, so it looks pretty good, right? So you can always leave it like that, but I would like to like add a little bit more detail to it. So I'm changing my brush to a really thin brush. Okay, so if you have this really small and thin brush, it's really good for detailing. So I'm just adding details to the stem to make it pop out a little bit. Alright, so I just want some areas or darken the areas on the darken those areas, darken those lines. Okay, remember not to overdo it. I just want to darken that. Well, you can darken everything if you like. So that's what I did. I darkened everything so that it's easier for you guys to follow. Okay. As you can see, it's popping out a little bit. Okay. So you can see all of those lines. So be very, very accurate in your lines. You're just retracing the lines that you've made. Just retrace those. Okay. Try not to make it too thick. Okay. Be very critical on this painting. As you can see, it's looking really good now. Okay. You're just making outlines. You're just following through the. Or you can always select areas that you want to, apply additional paint on. So the paint that I'm using is blue violet. I'm mixing it with the green a while ago. Okay. So it will create like that illusion of dark areas, then light areas. Since remember that this is being hit um, by light, of course. So just follow the trace lines that you made. So just trace and continue. Okay. So as you can see, it's almost done. Alright. Looks really good now. Okay. So you just need to like just a little bit from the inside. Sometimes there is like minute areas that are painted. As you can see, our painting is done. Right? So just adding a little more finishing touches because I want some areas that are darker. Again, just it's totally up to your decision, but of course I just wanted those details to pop out. As you can see, it's already done. So when you're done, you can always sign your work. Okay, I usually sign my paintings. Okay, so basically, okay, and I'm adding again. Okay, so just those blue areas at the bottom. Try always to double check your work. Okay, so I'll just sign it later. So I'm just creating that reflecting bottom area. So that to make it look better. And then I just dissolve it again. Okay. So just a small dissolve part. Right. And on the sides again, because that is the back side of the jar. Another one. Okay. I think that is okay. Then another outline. So you can see I'm always going back to that area because I'm not quite satisfied about the details to it. You can always go back, but be very critical on the details to it. If you're adding too much or it's less, remember this is your assessment. Okay? Or if it's not your assessment, it's a really good practice to do painting. As you can see, it really looks nice, right? Okay. The stems inside the jar is disappearing. There is a lot of details on top. Okay, just dissolving it a little bit because it's too strong, too dark. Okay. Alright. So let's sign our works. I always sign it again. I mentioned that I always sign it with my initials. Okay. Me, I always sign with a double T. Okay. It's the initials to my name. Okay. So our painting is done. So I do hope that you enjoy watching this video and you learned a lot. You can always practice with other items or you can mimic what I have done here. So that's that. So thank you for watching.